In the tranquil, cobblestone alleys of the 16th arrondissement of Paris, where ivy grows up centuries-old houses and café chatter fills the air, the peculiar behaviors of one guy have become the topic of conversation in the area. Karim Massine is a Lebanese expatriate who has a kind smile, a calm manner. It's a secret that is so astounding that even the most critical minds would have a hard time believing it. Each child would be silent and wide-eyed, and they would be carrying a little suitcase containing their possessions. What they would do is, then they would be gone forever, never to be seen again. His name is Karim Massine. Karim was born in the city of Beirut, which was ravaged by conflict. In this place, children often matured too quickly, and their innocence was taken away by the reverberations of bombs and the burden of loss. In light of the fact that he was now living in Paris and had made it his life's purpose to adopt children, it is possible that this history was the factor that influenced him. At the stroke of midnight, old Monsieur Dubois was certain that he heard a faint singing sound, a chorus of youthful voices humming a melody that he was unfamiliar with. It's not just one or two, however. About once a month, a new youngster would show up to his extravagant home. The neighbors first believed that Karim was nothing more than a kind and helpful person, a rich philanthropist who was providing a better life for orphans. As the months went by, however, the stillness that surrounded his house grew more uncomfortable. In the garden, there is no laughing. Where exactly are all of these offspring? How come we never get to see them? Do not rush to school. Not a single birthday party. There is nothing except quiet. But has good intentions, made the decision to take things into their own hands. They entered a chamber that was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Under the cover of darkness, they took turns maintaining watch, looking through binoculars in the hopes of catching a sight of the youngsters who remained a mystery. It was just for a split second that Madame Laurent, who lived on the other side of the street, claimed to have seen a child's face being shoved against a window on the upper floor. It was like wildfire how the rumors spread. A group of neighbors, led by Sophie Renaud, the proprietor of a cafe who is known for being inquisitive nothing, however. The infant's eyes seemed to stare into eternity. Other individuals seemed to have been stopped in the middle of a movement, with their body covered with exquisite porcelain, as if they had emerged from a picture by Degas. The lights are not flickering. There is no movement of shadows. The silence was strange and wonderful in every way. It is not true that he confines the youngsters. Long last, Sophie and a few other individuals succeeded in cornering Karim one evening as he was returning home with yet another new kid. Karim, Sophie stated in a stern voice, "We have to determine the truth." And during that time, they became a part of an ever-evolving museum that he referred to as the Museum of Forgotten Souls. The guy did little more than grin, his black eyes glimmering with something that could not be read. It was his question, "Would you like to meet them?" The events that transpired are going to eternally haunt the area. They were escorted inside by Karim, who took them up the great staircase and into a lengthy corridor. The sight of them would undoubtedly take you by surprise. In the images, the children not only seemed to be works of art, but they were works of art too. The whole essence of their souls had been altered, and their innocence had been crystallized into something that would last forever. The walls were covered with photos, all of which numbered in the hundreds. However, they were not your typical photographs. Odd. Despite the fact that her fingers were shaking, she stretched out, as if she was anticipating that the visions would vanish at her contact. Even if it was just for a short period of time, he provided them with a place to call home, and then the process of change started. Each of them depicted a youngster, but not in their natural state. Gilding with gold leaf, body paint that was combined with broken gemstones, and liquid porcelain that set on the skin like a second skeleton were some of the ancient methods that he used throughout his work. This is what is known as the disappearance. Through the process of painting, sculpting, and transforming them into living art, an ancient Egyptian image could be seen in the eyes of a toddler, whose face was partially covered in beautiful gold leaf. In no way was Karim causing damage to the children. Karim had a way with people. He had a soothing attraction, and his voice could put them in a condition that was reminiscent of a dream. He wanted to create works of art. They were being transformed into works of art by him. It turned out that Karim was a visionary artist, one who felt that the only way to capture pure beauty was to catch it in the transitory innocence of youth. Using art, he was able to set them free. There was only a little period of time that each kid was with him. As soon as their portraits were finished, they were sent to adoring families all around the globe. and his collection would save their photographs for everyone to see forever. It was a moment of astonished stillness among the neighbors. Each step she took was slow, as if she were walking through water. Her movements were reminiscent of a puppet. They were getting ready for a monster. My latest masterpiece. To their surprise, they discovered a guy who saw magic in places where others merely saw mystery. According to some, he was a genius. Some people murmured that his artwork was on the verge of becoming insane. However, there was one thing that was certain. Her eyes, in particular, were the most eerie aspect of her appearance. None of them were afraid. Peace is the only thing. There would never be another time when anybody would look at Karim Massine or his children in the same way. And what about the photographs? As they stood still in Karim's gallery, the neighbors' breaths were shallow, and their eyes darted from one impossible painting to the next. Sophie Renaud, the proprietor of the cafe that had been in the forefront of the movement against Karim, felt her heart rate rise. She hushed. This isn't real, as she said. All Karim did was grin. His voice was as smooth as whiskey that had been aged for a long time. All of the children that he adopted were orphans, and they were taken from the margins of society, such as war zones, slums, and damaged foster care systems. A touch of the alchemist, Karim did not make use of Photoshop or any other kind of computer alteration. All of the portraits were genuine. When it came to the hypnosis, the children never opposed it. Once their photo was taken, they were transported away to new life. The recollections of the procedure became foggy, like pieces of a lovely dream. The admission was made by Karim. They don't remember me, but the world remembers them. What the neighbors were unaware of was the fact that Karim's artwork had already garnered a cult following in the more obscure parts of the art world. His works were purchased by wealthy collectors for millions of dollars, yet none of them were ever sold. A number of the children were said to have never left his house, and it was said that they lived in a condition that was somewhere between life and art, kept as if they were living sculptures. A controversial filmmaker had attempted to chronicle Karim's technique in the past, but for some reason they disappeared without a trace. The temperature of Sophie's blood dropped. You're telling us these children are safe? The grin that Karim wore never moved. Safer than they've ever been. Revelation of the last word, the lights were then turned down. A secret door in the gallery opened with a creaking sound, and out of the shadows, a single little person materialized. It was a little girl, no more than 8 years old, with silver undertones on her skin and eyes that were wide and unblinking. According to Karim, "This is Lila," he whispered. The neighbors let out a gasp, simply because Lila was not only painted, she had not yet completed her transformation. Her veins were evident behind the small layers of metallic glaze that were covering her fingertips, as they were gradually encased in beautiful filigree. Karim mumbled, "She has agreed to stay," and he was right. Forever, with her thoughts whirling, Sophie fell backwards. Was this a work of art, an even more sinister thing? Could Karim have been a rescuer, bestowing immortality to these children by their beauty? Then, was he something totally different? A moment before anybody else could respond, Lila extended her hand and gently touched Sophie's wrist with her silvery fingertips. Sophie was able to see the reality at that precise time, a recollection for a moment. 1,000 lives that have perished, with a hushed whisper in her ear. Do you want to be beautiful too? In the morning of the next day, the neighbors awoke as if they had a dream. The home of Karim remained hushed. There was no one in the gallery. In addition, Sophie Renaud had vanished. Is that the only hint? Solitary picture that was left on the table of her cafe? Her face was partially painted in gold, and her eyes seemed to be peering into the void of eternity. There is a remark scribbled by hand at the bottom. Some souls are too beautiful to remain unseen. There are still youngsters that show up at Karim's door, even to this day. There are also new portraits that appear in the realm of art every once in a while. These portraits are gorgeous, frightening, and memorable. The true question, however, is as follows. Those that choose to remain, what happens to them?